Hi, my name is Poeartistry. I am excited to welcome you to James Poeartistry Productions. You are tuning into an incredible experience known as Poeartistry Gold, where we delve into the art of commentary, storytelling and poetry. We aim to bring you inspiring and thought-provoking content.
This is a Poeartistry Gold moment by the author James Lynch.
Hello, perceptive readers. This is James Lynch, and welcome to the Poeartistry Gold number 87. To open, I want to say we use knowledge to help people. We use knowledge to help people. Now, with that being said, the way that the world often functions today in the way of dealing with different types of problems, it's almost like it's three ways. One of them is in a spiritual way. Another way is the legal and justice systems, in place. And then there are the social issues, the communities, the way that everyday people interact with one another. Now, out of all three of them, what has a tendency to cause the most problems when it gets out of hand? Well, first, let me say, for the context of what I'm sharing with you today, and you will see what I mean, it's actually the social issues aspect of things. And this is what I mean by that. Remember, I like to use examples of going back even to high school. You heard me mention that some of us really do feel, and it has proven to be the case, that everything they needed to learn about the social issues of interacting with one another, they learned from just elementary, middle, and high school. Why? Because don't you know, even one famous talk show podcaster even related to this. And I believe he related this even within the past 5 years, at the age that he is at, that he even came to the conclusion in in some ways that even at these late ages, some persons are still just being babies, big babies. And the way that he talks, because he has that nice way about his personality in that way, he was even including himself, you see, in that. And you heard me even mention examples of Bible prophets who did the same thing. And then you also heard me mention sometimes, we're including myself, about saying, when it comes to different type of standardization or subliminal, when we get real deep into the way people try to manipulate things and get their ways and stuff like that at times that we may think that we're really in control of what we're doing. And I told you, and we're really not, because some of these methods that are being used upon us and the ones that people have really studied for actually nefarious reasons and to actually get dishonest gain from it, that no, you do have individuals like this in the world that know exactly of what they're doing. Scammers use it all the time. And so I'll never forget one person who was mentioning why they even preyed upon older people, you see, through some of the phone conversations, to try to get them to buy this and that. And this was the case. They knew that some of these older persons were actually lonely. So they used their time with them on the phone as if, if you don't buy something, I'm going to get off the phone with you immediately in this way or that way. And it was like some of these older persons, who had the funds to be able to buy something, they just bought something just to still have somebody who would give them attention or whatever. So you see how they capitalize on that loneliness of even an elderly person. And then when in talking with people who had that type of outlook at times, they just made the expression, well, they got the money. You see, and that's not the way that anybody should look at any type of situation. But this is what I mean about with social issues. There can be an insensitivity. There can be just not even really thinking about the ramifications of an insensitive act towards another individual. I'd like to share with you that people end up in very bad situations at times because of the insensitivity of people. And anymore, you see, I like to say that people, can decide not to patronage you or not to even help you. And I'm going to emphasize that is certainly their choice. Yet we live in an era now where, see, this is the point that I'm seeing even the younger generation is missing, where not only some of them will not patronage you, but then they actually somehow in their mind, some of these persons have gotten the idea that then they can turn around and still tear you down the rest of the way so that nobody else could actually benefit from your services and actually pay you. It's interesting because this is something that I've meditated on over even the past 5 years of persons who will straight up say they don't want you, and and that's pretty cool. That's okay. But then, and they even say and tell others they rejected you, but still their actions are showing that, wait a minute now, you don't want this person. You rejected this person, then still, why are you all up in their business? Why are you still just taking in another energetic way in so many ways? These same things that, okay, if you were amicable towards that person, if you were to still treat them just as an everyday neighbor or what have you, then it would be showing that, no, you said with your mouth you rejected this person, but all your actions are showing energetically and maybe in otherwise that, no, you still accepted this person anyway. So I'm not going to go any further in that. But see, I mentioned the term energetically about things because, I appreciate occupations that help people. And yet at the same time, when I talk about social issues, see, people who have been involved in social experiments at times, and I referenced the Tuskegee experiments. Look up my podcast about those. The Tuskegee syphilis experiments. See, these were actually experiments that was forced upon first the airmen, but you see, it branched out into some of the communities, the unethical practices of forcing persons to be affected in such a way and not even to give them help just because they wanted to see the end result until the person finally died. That's a fact. And so these are persons who also wore, let me just say, they were outstanding members in society that also accepted that. But it was still ethically wrong with what they did behind these persons' backs. You see, social experiments in the interest of bettering humanity, you see, humankind, but yet these persons' rights were stripped and ignored just to have these experiments tried upon them, which wasn't right. And it wasn't right spiritually. It's not right, you see, legally in the justice systems. But see, when persons rely solely on just social issues, where people can just let their personality treat somebody any old kind of way that they want to, and see, and that's what I mean. It happens at times that persons will say they reject you, but no, it doesn't turn into a total rejection of just leaving you alone. Then it's like they want to find some way through lies. You see what I'm saying? Through manipulation of some of the other connections they may have, other influencing they have, and they'll just put you in a controlled environment. And in a controlled environment, they can play around with your life. They can play around with your money. They can mess you over in so many ways. And for the people who say that it doesn't happen, then you know what? Either they're in ignorance or they're part of the system that does it. Because I'm here to tell you today, and I know I said before God, it does happen. It happens all the time. It happens all the time. These are some of the things that, like I said, they can reason with you in a social way. But see, the other problem is now they've tried to bring a lot of that type of thinking even into the legal system, the justice system, and even the churches. So that persons don't even know when to say when, or they're not allowed to even say when. So they put these persons in the same type of situation of the reason why I mentioned about the Tuskegee syphilis experiments, because remember I told you, once those men and their families were placed in this type of situation, don't you know that even when the cure was around, that they were actually lied to even the wives of these men who were trying to get help in one way or the other. Now you tell me whether God agreed with that or not. If you say God did agree with it, then guess what? These social issues have affected your mind on the level of what I told you earlier about sometimes we think we really know we're not that we're not being affected, but we really are. I'm here to tell you today, it was still ethically wrong. Had no business being accepted to treat those men and those families like that. And the excuse of their lower economic condition makes it even worse. See, the way the thinking goes. See, the legal system and the spirituality that is in the churches are just some of the factual ideologies, if you will, that prove is more on the balance scales of what truth and justice really is and what being a humanitarian really is than a lot of the ways that people justify some of these social and control experiments in the interest of even saying it's therapy at times. And it's like, no, even when it comes to therapy, you don't put people in therapy without their knowledge. But see, that happens. And I'm not going to go more into it because let me read something to you from Psalms, because I'm talking about the energy. I'm talking about how knowledge helps people. But see, when I talk about things on energetic level, make no mistake about it, this is going to still show you that even though a person may have a certain responsibility, I'm just going to say to you very clearly, if their energy is off towards you, see, it doesn't mean it may be off towards somebody else, but if their energy, and I know that's a loaded way of putting it because it's encompassing the countenance, the knowledge, and really what's in the kidneys and heart of that person. Well, let me use a word you would understand in a different way. See, a person can be in a position, but they can still be just as bigoted against a certain situation, a certain culture, a certain way that this person lives their life. You see what I'm saying? So, as imperfect humans, we can still battle with that. So, if the energy is off towards that way, then you know what? Then the person who may be even going to get treatment from this person or that person, then they shouldn't be, once again, forced to have to still deal with that type of situation. Why? Because you will find in some cases, instead of the knowledge that's supposed to help persons, it can be easily over time manipulated, MK'd, I use that expression, in such a way where they jack that person's mind and spirit up all the same. See, I believe firmly, without Jesus even going into detail, that's one of the reasons why he talks so strongly about not stumbling a person on purpose. So we can look at a person sometimes as if, oh, that person went away from God or what have you. And that even use references that's talked about in the scriptures about where if that person left, then that person was not of, you see, our sorts anyway. See, that's one of the things that Paul said. And we know that Paul was speaking truth. And so then I always say, when you have a scripture like that, and then you have what Jesus also stated about, stumbling blocks and things of that nature. And he emphasized in times past about all things are possible with God. Here is how you still got to reconcile it. And this is what I'm telling you with all these statements. The energy, and that's what I tell you about, the type of methods that are used on people at times can basically rewire the mind in such a way. How many heard me, well, you heard me say this in times past, that my father even used to say, you can kill a person. You see what I'm saying? Mentally. See, and even spiritually. So it's like this. That person at one time that you saw that loved God so much or what have you. You know what? The way that, I like the way that my father, I picked this up with the way he was talking. Yeah, that person died loving God, even though they're still now walking around here. Do you understand what I'm saying, perceptive reader? So that's another reason when it comes to people who have even taken their life through suicide. At one time, and I still remember this from decades back, boy, where some people are saying a minute, that person killed himself, they burning in hell right now. And that's the way people used to really say it. But guess what? Again, for somebody to get to that state, as from what I learned and just giving you some background information, even learning this from spiritual sages in the church, it was like, again, that person most likely was already dead before they took their life upstairs mentally in a certain way of this and that. So God knows, really. And so no one could still say dogmatically, even though this person self-murdered themselves, so to speak, that God wouldn't raise them back up from the dead. So this is what I mean when I talk about help, energy, about persons really at times not knowing that they're doing what they're doing, and the way you really have to approach such an individual is not always like in the textbook way, because people are still very unique. And so to try to handle one matter by constantly disrespecting the individual and starving them in this way or that way, I want to make another quote from Thomas Sowell. You see where he was talking about social experiments one time. And he really, hit it right on the head where he said, the nail on the head, where he said, look, now I got to paraphrase because I can't say it exactly how he said it. He said, basically, I don't see the benefit of taking somebody who was already bad off and making them worse off in the interest of improving their condition. And I know I put that in my own words, but the spirit of what he was saying is factual. And that's the way some people actually implement, I told you, on the social level, their so-called way of saying that they're helping, but they really turn into busybodiers. They have actually overstepped their authority, affecting persons' relationships, affecting their job opportunities and money, all because they want to make it seem like this person needs psychiatric help, when the reality is sometimes, and you can do research in this matter, even the so-called persons that were so-called sent to help this person this way or that way, they end up finding out later on that, yeah, even the so-called help was battling with something on such a level that it came out in their efforts of the person that they were supposed to even be helping. And so then it just compounded and it compounded upon itself. I told you, deal with a certain type of energy on that level. If you have a certain type of personality, remember, God made us all differently and uniquely. So some of us are supposed to get upset or in righteous indignation. Some of us are supposed to say, after the 1,000th time, you're being a jerk and you know it. While you have other persons who's going to always sit as the wallflower that's slowly but surely withering and dying, because maybe the other personalities still just didn't step in and do what God wanted them to do, even if that meant calling somebody else being a jerk, like Jesus did with the Pharisees in his eloquent way of speaking. So, in Psalms 1, this is what I want to emphasize. Happy is the man that has not walked in the counsel of the wicked ones, and in the way of sinners has not stood, and in the seat of ridiculers have not sat. But his delight is in the law of Jehovah, and in his law he reads in an undertone day and night. And it goes on to talk about how this person will become successful spiritually. And I want to also emphasize that these scriptures are factual and true. And yet, in this world, as Jesus already made clear too, we have to deal with all sorts of people. He showed again his willingness to talk to all sorts of people. But, he knew he had his own spirituality together. He had his own energy together as well. And so, even though he sometimes even entertained the ridicule of the ridiculers, it was sometimes in an effort to answer the questions. You see, answer the questions of the other ones who were sincerely just trying to learn and listen. And we know also he ate with persons that they said was sinners and had other occupations that actually helped them. He also spoke up and protected them so that even cowboy and roughshod justice couldn't even be done against sinners, you see. So that goes to show you there's a still proper way of due process of carrying out justice, but even sincerely helping persons. Sincerely helping persons. The energy, the motive with what we do things always has to be upright in order to help that person. And see, and this is what I'm going to tell you, a decision that I even made some years ago. And it keeps me, again, happy and feeling like I'm still in God's grace by doing it. I've been able to talk with sages. Some of them, remember, since it's all needed, some of them, when bit more in the world, put up with certain situations that they'll see a person doing in this way or that way, and they will address it and dress just like that, and they will address it in a way that they do it, and even if they don't care too much for the person, they'll still say, I'm doing what's right with God, even though their energy may be off going towards that individual or whatever. Either way, you see, God still was using them. Some people may question that. In some cases, maybe they were already on their way out, and in some cases, they still had so many different good qualities in so many other ways. You can still understand why God just, used them in that way. It was just their personality. Yet, I've actually seen other spiritual sages as well that will tell you in a minute, you know what? Even if that person is doing something wrong, if you don't love that person, don't you dare go over there and start trying to counsel them. And so I'm going to add another thought to it. If you don't love some of these people with some of the access that you may have towards this person, which already God said we should be minding our own business, then why in the world would you want to sit up there and look at their life and judge it every single day, sending that energy, that countenance towards them in that way? Just a thought. So what am I saying? What was the choice? See, I believe the same thing. I believe in time, as I told you, eventually, we will all get along with one another. But you know what? To try to force my views upon someone else, and especially when I still know that I'm recovering from all the deadly energy, if you will, of dealing with such individual or individuals throughout the years. You see what I'm saying at this time? That's just not wise. So you can probably tell which counsel now I live by. And I'm going to tell you this too that I told you I've seen. And this is what I mean by handling matters the correct way. Sometimes I told you persons will want to interfere and get involved with a subject, but because the way they came at it with that, again, negative, almost want to just stir the pot energy, you see, they made the situation worse. Where I told you I've seen other times where if an individual was allowed their own time, not what somebody else thought, and it didn't matter how long it took, when it came to their senses in certain ways, certain feelings, and sometimes what made them do what was right was because they literally finally got other areas, whether economically and things of that nature, situation where their brain could finally be settled, that they could think on that level. See, way back in the day, decades ago, sometimes persons would even say that, you know what, I don't have the luxury to think on this in this way or that way right now. Or some would say, you know what, my priority is I got to take care of this, and that. And see, and that's what some people would say, that's what being called a man is. And so the point is to try to mess up somebody's process or what have you, that you already know they show that they're reasonable. And see, and that's the other thing about social issues. I told you, they'll sit up there and they'll jump and badger and badger and badger somebody that they know is really reasonable, while they allow somebody that they really should address to just run kind of roughshod and raggedy with some of the stuff in their practices that they do. So all the same, the knowledge of the motive of what we do things and learn, it should always be, we use knowledge to help people. And if you don't care too much for somebody or what have you, then why in the world would you still want to be all up in their life, just pulling them down, just trying to make situations even worse for them? Then that will go to show that it is not based on righteously really wanting to help the person in the first place. Take care of yourself, perceptive reader.